A Children's Advocacy Center, or CAC, provides support to victims of child abuse. Without a CAC, an abused child may have to tell their story over and over again in settings that may be scary or where kids may think that they're in trouble. Then, families have to search around for the services their children need, all on their own. But in a CAC, a child tells their story to a trained interviewer who makes the process gentle on the child and finds the facts which are crucial to the child's case. Then, a community of professionals in medicine, law enforcement and child protective services, prosecution, victim advocacy, and other heroes work through the CAC to decide the best way to help the child. And CACs provide science-backed mental health care that heals kids from trauma and helps them reclaim their futures. This community of caring professionals rallies around the child so children have everything they need, all in one place, at the CAC.
Welcome to My Healthy Mind. I'm Michael Hunter. The young woman you're about to meet with her harrowing experiences of childhood abuse may be hard, uncomfortable for us to listen to. But imagine her discomfort, her pain, in telling her story. And then imagine having to repeat the ordeal 8, 10, a dozen times to police, social services, the courts. It's no wonder these crimes are so underreported. Not to mention the fact that these kinds of abuse can happen to anyone in any family, indiscriminately. The good news is that now there are new efforts and new programs in place to offer kids who have been abused a safe space to talk about it. Genevieve, Shelley, welcome to My Healthy Mind.
Hello, thank you.
Hi.
Genevieve, I know the idea here is not to re-traumatize or re-victimize a person who's been abused, like yourself, by having them relive or recount the experience over and over again. But you want to talk about it. Why?
I absolutely do want to talk about it. I want to talk about it because I've seen so many people come to me when I've been more open about what's happened to me, because people don't realize how often domestic violence happens to people around us. I've met so many people that similar situations as that have happened to me has happened to them also. And secondary victimization is a very real thing, and it's very traumatizing. But luckily, I was able to go to Kids Talk through the Guidance Center, and they were absolutely amazing with having us tell our story only once. And that's what has prepared me to be able to talk about my story more often and more openly like I am right now.
And you're 20, so take us through that experience.
Well, I was abused as long as I can remember. It started when I was little. I didn't realize until I was around 16 that I had actually had bruises on me as a toddler. And it started out as my father was just more rough with me, and he'd like to wrestle, and he was a little harsh or strict. But then as I grew up, I realized that my other friends didn't have parents like this, that the way I was treated, the things that would happen to me when I would mess something up or do something wrong, they didn't have the same repercussions as I did as a child. And one of the occasions that had really woken me up, I could say, was the night of August 8th, 2017. I was 16 and a half years old, and my father had been drinking, and he grew very upset. My mom had had a operation earlier that day, so she was under anesthesia. And I remember I was just going about my day like I normally would. And suddenly, he had grown very angry at her for something she had nothing to do with, as she had an operation. And I just remember looking over from the kitchen, and he was suddenly pushing her down, and I didn't know what to do. And I just started yelling at him, "Stop, stop, don't hurt her, don't hurt her." And he started yelling at her, "Why did you push me down?" Like, she didn't. She's obviously the one on the floor. And I'm just freaking out. Like, he just pushed my mom down. Next thing I know, I blanked out and I was over the kitchen sink and I was blacking out. His hands were around my neck and I was completely losing consciousness. From there, I passed out for a little bit and I remember opening my eyes and my mom was jumping on top of him, trying to get him off of me. Next thing I know, he was dragging me across the floor by my hair and he wouldn't let us leave. I tried to grab my phone. I tried to call 911. He wouldn't let me. He grabbed my keys. He grabbed my phone. He did the same with my mom. And next thing I know, I had to run down the street to my little brother's best friend's house and go grab him. Later that night, he had locked my mom in her room and locked my little brother in his room, as I would normally hide him during occasions such as this. And he pulled out a gun. And next thing I know, my father was naming each bullet for me, my mom, and my brother, and telling me this is what's going to happen. And he had planned to shoot each of us, and he would shoot himself last. And somehow at 16 and a half, it was my job to calm him down and to get him to not do it. Things like this were, I hate to say it, but pretty normal for me at this point in my life. It had been 16 and a half years of this. But for some reason, this certain time, I had grown so ill. And so finally, my mom took me to the doctor and explained to the doctor what was happening. And that's when the doctor turned to me and asked me, Genevieve, what's really happening? And in that moment, I realized what had been happening to me. And I just poured out everything to my doctor. But after telling the doctor, I finally felt free. I finally felt like there's a step I can take forward. And then once I talked to Kids Talk, from the first moment when you walk in the door, they don't want you to feel secondary victimization. They focus on children feeling comfortable with only one therapist in the room. And you sit in this room and they have cameras across the room to be able to listen and see the child's expression as they tell their story. And they have a therapist who just asks questions. So this way, we don't have 15 police officers asking us what happened. We don't have people's judgmental faces as we tell our story, because this therapist is trained to listen to children and hear their story and not react badly. They react in a way that the child continues to tell them what's happened to them. And so by being able to have this child only tell their story once, and it's videotaped, it's recorded, and you're talking to a therapist you feel comfortable with, they're then able to move forward. They don't feel victimized from this. But for me, I actually felt empowered to be able to tell my story.
They would give us a chart, and I remember sitting in the room and reading everything that had happened to us and just started checking off. And I realized before I was even done with that survey that I had answered yes to pretty much all the questions, and I didn't realize I was abused and my children were abused.
Because I had realized in the doctor's office that we were being abused, but I don't think anyone really realizes how bad it is while they're in it. What a lot of people don't understand is what abuse does to someone. For me, I had taken it and I lived two separate lives. I was one person at home, one person out in the world. And my mom was the same way, but at home, she was a ghost. She didn't even remember when the abuse would happen. My brother doesn't remember a lot of the abuse. My mom doesn't. And one of the hardest things is that I remember all of it. So when you ask me, think of a moment, there's not a single moment. I remember it all. It all still stings. It all still hurts. But I look forward to being able to use my story to help others. And I try to rethink about my trauma. I try to rethink about ways that I can help others.
And Genevieve, you were telling us about the doctor. How deep did it get when you were telling him what occurred?
When I told my doctor what had occurred, I also mentioned how I had begun cutting about 4 years earlier from that experience. That experience would have to have been one of the worst times I had ever cut, but Due to how deeply the trauma had cut into me, I had in return cut into myself, because for the longest time, I thought it was me. When you have an abuser, they're a narcissist. They like to tell you that it's your fault. So I always thought everything was my fault, and that's why I had to starve myself and diet to be as skinny as I could. I had to get as good grades as I could. If I didn't, I would get a black eye, and that happened before. And so I'd begun to cut, and around the age of 12 is when I had started to take pills and try to end my own life because I thought it was my fault. And I had also began to drink because he would feed me alcohol. He would give me moonshine all the time at 12. And I have so many memories of being in 7th or 8th grade too, of being just blackout drunk. None of my friends even, had anything to do with alcohol, and here my dad's feeding me shots. And so I would cut, I would take pills, I would do anything I could to just try to leave this earth. I would pray to God every night to please take me because I couldn't take it anymore.
If you're having any kind of mental health crisis, we can help. At Team Wellness Crisis Centers, you'll be seen immediately, stabilized in our own private facility, and given all the care you need to get better. Don't wait. Call the Team Wellness Helpline at 1-888-813-TEAM. It could be your lifeline.
So there were symptoms that something was not right. And oftentimes we see them as self-medicating or coping skills that are present when therapy is not. What are some of the other things you were doing that were symptomatic that you realized this was a part of that?
Besides the drinking, the overdosing, and cutting, I had noticed myself starving myself and pushing myself too hard to be too perfect. And that's when my anxiety set in, my depression, my PTSD. There's a whole list. I remember whenever I'd see a new therapist, I'd have to go through this list of all these different things that I was undergoing, because obviously anyone would have post-traumatic stress disorder from something like this that had happened to them. Anxiety comes with that. Some people even have clinical depression, and I had been depressed since I was around 4 when when the abuse had started. So all of these things had piled up along with a million other factors.
And I'm going to say the worst night of my life was my daughter overdosing and trying to commit suicide, and me throwing her into the car, running 2 red lights to get her into the hospital, grabbing a wheelchair and just picking her up and putting her into it and running into that hospital to save her life. They charcoaled her, and she's here today, which I'm so thankful for. But that was probably a mother's worst nightmare.
So many people are silenced, so many victims throughout everything they've been through, especially feeling silenced during secondary victimization. And so I decided to get this tattooed on my finger, as if someone is hushing me or telling me to be quiet, because forever I was told to be quiet by my abuser. I got this tattoo to symbolize all of my hopes for these people, that they're able to get out like we did, that they're able to receive strength and receive what they need to be able to move out and get out and move forward.
And did you learn that in therapy, or did you learn that about yourself as a byproduct of everything that you've gone through?
We're coming up on 4 years after the abuse, and every single year I take that time and I reflect back about how much I've changed every single year and how much more of a person I've become, the person I want to be. I'm finally able to do that, and it wouldn't be possible without all of the therapy I went through. I went to inpatient. I had gone to outpatient twice, And even through those experiences of me saying, I want to go somewhere, I want to get help, I'm not thinking straight.
You know, one of the biggest signs, and I say this to parents now, if you see this happening with your children, is I noticed she withdrew from everything. And she was a figure skater. She was on the pom team. She was very popular in school. She all of a sudden withdrew, didn't want to hang out with anybody, didn't want to talk to anybody, stayed in her room. That was a huge sign, because that's not who she was.
I wouldn't go to school at all. I went to school maybe twice a week, and I just kind of gave up on my life. And I've never been like that before. I mean, nowadays all I do is, I love going to work, I love college and everything, and I wasn't myself back then.
Sometimes a parent may not know that the child has been abused or that they even need therapy. Say the child was very outgoing and suddenly you notice over a period of time the child has become withdrawn. Other things may be angry outbursts that have come out of nowhere, moods shifting, maybe depressed mood. If it's a teenager or older child, the child may have began using substances. The child may begin running away. These are some of the things that parents and caregivers can look for to determine, is maybe my child is going through something. Maybe my child has experienced something outside of my awareness. And so if you see any of these symptoms, please begin to talk to your child and then try to understand what's happening, what's different for them. Sometimes therapy and approaching the therapeutic process can be a bit scary for the child and for the families. And so some of the things that we do is encourage the families, encourage the child to actually talk about the trauma. Sometimes children and their caregivers may feel like and believe that talking about it and having them to remember it is going to make things worse for their child. And actually not talking about the trauma makes things worse, because that's where sometimes memories are suppressed, the experience may be suppressed, and it is going to come out in different behaviors. And so it is more beneficial for the child to be able to process that trauma, work through those negative cognitions and negative beliefs, for the child to be able to understand that what happened to them was not their fault, to help the child to work through the grief of experiencing a loss of whatever that loss may have been, because trauma is often something has been lost for that child. We walk alongside our children and families to ensure that they not only survive the trauma, but they thrive after the trauma.
Next time you need to see a doctor, don't go to a doctor. Call Team Wellness Online. With Team Wellness Online, you can see a doctor or a therapist without waiting, usually within 24 hours. Your televisit is private and 100% secure, and you can take all the time you want. So next time you need to see a doctor or therapist, call Team Wellness Online at 888-813-TEAM to make a virtual appointment, and we'll come to you.
Kids Talk Children's Advocacy Center was created because there was a need in our community. The Children's Advocacy Center model is a national model that was created to really protect children from all the systems that become involved when children have experienced some type of abuse or trauma. At Kids Talk Children's Advocacy Center, all of the services are free. There's no cost to any of the children or families involved for as long as they need services. It should not be children's responsibility to keep themselves safe. So as friends, families, communities, teachers, coaches, we all should come together and report concerns of abuse or neglect or trauma. We want to make sure that children can get the services that they need, and they can't. The pandemic has increased this risk substantially. Children are not as visible as they were before. Some children are still not in school. Some children are not, there's a lot of after school activities that are not happening. And this was a big safety net for our children. So please, if you see something that is concerning, you don't have to be able to prove it. You just have to have a suspicion, a concern, and then let the experts and the professionals look into it to make sure that that child's safe. But together, one child at a time, we can make our community safer and let children just have their childhoods.
And when you finally get to a therapist that has honed in on their craft and really cares about you and can partner with you for your success, you learn things like you mentioned, that it wasn't your fault.
Absolutely.
The more you hear that over and over again, how does that help reinforce and shape who you are today? Acknowledging that it's not your fault, and more importantly, that it's not your fault either.
One of the hardest things for me was, I hate to talk about this, but it's true, I had blamed my mom for a really long time. I was this little child. There was nothing I could have done different. There was nothing I could have done, and yet I was the one who went to the doctor and I told them what was happening to me. I didn't feel close with my mom. I despised her almost, and I hate that I did, but for the longest time I saw it as her fault because as a child you're supposed to look up to your mom, but I didn't realize that she was a ghost. She was a shell of a person, and that's not her fault. It was the abuse that did that to her. We finally came to terms with what had happened, and both of us had gone to therapists. There were even therapists that weren't good. You don't always find the right therapist on the first try, and a lot of people hate going to therapy, hate that feeling of, oh, okay, I'm finally going to try with a therapist. If they get the wrong therapist at first, they're not going to try again. And then they don't get help and they can't heal. For me, I went to the wrong therapist at first. This therapist had wanted me to text my father and meet up with him and let him apologize to me for what he had done. I was in the right state of mind at that point, and I told her, no way, I'm not doing that. And that's when I realized I'm with the wrong therapist. So finally, when I went to Kids Talk and I met my therapist was perfect for me. They did the same for my little brother, and he also got a therapist that was absolutely perfect for him. And I'm coming up on around, I want to say 3 years with my therapist. We're about to finally close my case, but I will say it's been absolutely wonderful as other things have continued to happen in my life. And she has been able to help me get through these and process everything as I see different situations that kind of reflect my abuse and are similar happen after the abuse. I'm able to walk through them more healthily and cope with them in a better way than I had been before.
And Genevieve, you also had to testify against your father. Can you tell us about that experience?
Yes. So it was during one of the times that I had been an outpatient because I had not felt good enough to be able to be in school. I couldn't function day to day because I knew I would have to testify against my father. And a lot of times when it comes to an abuser, you feel super close to them and they're your best friend in the world. When I was being abused, it was my dad that I was closest with out of anyone, out of any friend, anything. I was closest with my dad. And so it almost felt like I was betraying him because the abuse had shadowed my vision. I thought that I was betraying my father by going and testifying against him. But with the help of my village, I was able to get that strength and know that I'm the victim here, not him. I didn't do anything wrong.
And we also hear that hurt people hurt people. How have you triumphed over that with therapy?
So the way I see it is there's really one of two ways you can go after something horrible happens to you. I've seen people who have had treacherous, immense, horribly, just, I can't even imagine their pain, things happen to them, and unfortunately they haven't taken the right path. Then I've seen people who they've had horrible, horrible things happen to them, and all they can do is tell people how to be strong. I've learned so much from watching other people around me go through different things of what to do, what not to do. Especially through therapy, I learned what I can do to help better myself. And the biggest thing that really changed my life and made me want to be different from my father was realizing that I have a purpose in this world. And that's what makes me wake up every morning. That's what makes me want to be nice to people. Because the biggest thing is, I don't know what anyone else is going through. You right now could be going through something horrible, life-changing, and I have no idea. And so I try to, every time I meet someone, just smile, maybe crack a joke, because I'm not the most amazing person, but every day I strive to be that person that others feel comfortable to come to and talk to about things they're going through. I want to be the reason that someone doesn't take that pill, that someone realizes, wow, someone said hi to me, like I feel better today.
You have a very impressive resume, scholastic achievement, doing great things, and you're only 20. Mom, how proud are you?
She's going to Wayne State on a full scholarship, and she's going to be a lawyer for domestic violence. She's in criminal justice right now. I can't say how proud I am.
Wow, a very, very thriving, long, promising future ahead of you. If you could say one final thing to everybody that's listening right now, what would that message be?
Your story can unlock other people's doors. You can make a difference by being able to open up. You have a brighter tomorrow. You really do. I never thought I'd make it this far, and here I am. You can do that too.
Anxiety, depression can happen to anyone for all kinds of reasons, especially during difficult and trying times that no one should have to go through alone. At Team Wellness, trained, compassionate, caring professionals will get you into the right treatment so you get better. Team Wellness. You are not alone.
Thank you for joining us today as we worked through the often grueling emotional process from abuse to healing, helped by child advocacy programs like Kids Talk. If you'd like to learn more about this or any mental health issue, please visit our website at myhealthymind.com, on Facebook at My Healthy Mind Show, or on Twitter. We'll see you next week for another edition of My Healthy Mind. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more content from My Healthy Mind. Let's talk about it.